Alright, so in today's video we're checking out the WFLY ET16S. So this is a more of a traditional style size of radio transmitter for the RC hobby. Does not have OpenTX or some sort of an open source operating system on here. It's got a proprietary operating system that runs the radio, so that is going to be probably the biggest downside of this radio if you're considering this. You know, what this radio kind of reminds me of is like, I don't know, kind of looks a little bit like one of the Futaba models. I think they're maybe trying to copy that, but they went with a completely self-designed operating system for the radio. They did not go with any of the open source ones like OpenTX or EdgeTX that I think a lot of people in the, especially in the FPV community, will probably prefer. This radio might be more interesting to airplane pilots because there's a pretty nice touchscreen here. Yeah, so this radio might be a little bit more targeted towards airplane pilots. I think the features on here are going to be more interesting to those. So not really my forte in terms of like programming airplane models into radios. I typically just do a pretty simple setup in OpenTX, but you can do that with this particular radio if you want to. So just go into the menu here, and then you go into your model settings, and then you can set up various mixes here, all using this touchscreen, which is pretty nice. And the touchscreen does seem to work fairly well. It's responsive. It doesn't seem to have any major issues. And it's basically a combination of using the touchscreen and the buttons here. You have an exit lock button here and a home monitor button over here, as well as this little joystick here to go around. You can also select with the button down press on the button if you don't want to use the joystick. And of course you have your things like timer, your channel monitor, for example. You can exit out of here, go back to the main screen. If you want to go to the channel monitor, you can long press this home monitor button there. It brings up the channel monitor like that. So it's I'm not going to really cover the operating system. If you guys want to see a tutorial on that, let me know in the comments below if you happen to have this radio. I'm not really sure how many people actually have this radio or not. It does come with Hall sensor gimbals. They're actually not bad, but I don't like that they're very low in they're very set very deep in the radio like this. So especially if you're holding it like this and you have like, if you're trying to get to this part of the stick on the inner part of the gimbal, it's very low and you end up kind of touching the front face of the radio. Obviously you can adjust the stick height up and down, so you can make the stick end longer. It is adjustable. So it's at the lowest setting right there, so obviously you can move it up if you want, and also change the stick ends if you want a different stick end. Got your traditional trim buttons here. Got your lanyard hook for your neck strap. Speaker. The on-off button, I think you can press both of these, and then they'll turn the radio off. Long press one of the buttons, doesn't really matter which one. I'll turn the radio on, and you got all of your normal switches here: 3-position, another 3-position, another 3-position. I think all of these are 3-position switches. Yeah, up here as well. A momentary switch over here, and one 2-position switch over here. Got your sliders over here and over here. This is the rubber grip on the side. It's already, I haven't used it very much and it's kind of wearing down already. Each side. Got a battery tray here in the bottom. And it does hold 18650 lithium ion cells, and it has a battery tray. It uses this proprietary connection here. And in the back here is a standard JR module bay, and this port does allow for use with connecting to modules that speak Crossfire, so that'll include the larger full-size Crossfire module and also certain Express LRS modules that have the screen. And because this is not running OpenTX and you can't run the Lua script, you do need modules that have the screen and button support, so you can change your settings on the module. But because anything that speaks Crossfire is supported on this radio, you can use these modules with this radio if that's the route you want to go. In the product page, it also mentions that R9M modules are also supported, but obviously that's serial protocol. It's not Crossfire, but it does say it's supported. Right? I no longer have an R9M module that I can test, so I was unable to test that. So this is running a 2.4 gigahertz system internally. You got a 2.4 gigahertz antenna here up on top. It's a proprietary FHSS type of protocol, and it does come with a couple of receivers. They're basically like S-Bus type receivers, similar to like a FreeSky XM Plus. WFLY also did send along this external module. It's called the MG216, and these are based on the SX1280 chip that are on all of the ExpressLS hardware. So it's a 2.4 gigahertz system that allows for long range, and again, it uses its own proprietary firmware and updating and stuff. And it does come with, I did send a couple of, like a smaller receiver and a medium-sized receiver for this. It also is based on the same protocol for a longer range. So if you want to go with this route, you can do this. But then this is sort of the downside of this whole system here and the radio is it's not using anything that's open source. It's all proprietary, and you're completely reliant on the company to provide support, to provide firmware updates, also firmware updates for the receivers, for the modules, etc. And as far as I can tell, I haven't seen any updates on their website. Support is a little sketchy, and this is the downside of going with a proprietary ecosystem like this. Is you're basically at the mercy of the manufacturer, and they're a small company. They don't make a lot of products. They seem to, don't sell a lot of stuff, and the prices aren't super competitive. Like this radio is like $160, and for that you can get a pretty nice Radiomaster TX16S. Yeah, so basically for that price point, I would probably recommend a Radiomaster TX16S over this one because of all the advantages of having open source software and the ability to, get firmware updates, community support, etc. This one, unless it's like much cheaper than it is, isn't really something that I would recommend. I would, if they're selling this for under $100, and perhaps it might be worth looking at. Comes with Hall sensor gimbals and a nice touchscreen, etc. But because of all those downsides, at the end of the day, I really can't make a recommendation to get this particular system. Granted, there's nothing wrong with it. It worked. I flew it with this Axis flying module in the back with an ExpressLS receiver, of course, in the quad. Everything checked out. I didn't have any glitches, no crashes in terms of the radio rebooting or anything like that. Everything seemed to be just fine. The build quality is decent. I would say it's average, just slightly above average. It's not an amazing looking radio or anything like that, but it is adequate. It'll get the job done. It's just that because of the lack of open source software on something like this, it's just, I think that in general, I would avoid it unless you can get this radio for extremely cheap. So sometimes like the beginner radios, like the Light Radio 2 or Light Radio 3 from Beta FPV, those I can recommend because those are very, very inexpensive. They come in the $40 to $50, $60 range, whereas this is $100 more, so it's harder to recommend this. And it would be better if you go with something like a Jumper T12, a Radiomaster TX12, a TX16S, etc. Something like that is probably going to be better for you if you're looking at a radio for the first time, or something a little bit bigger. Maybe you're moving up from like a small like toy radio or something like that. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Let me know in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.